Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. I'm Jordan Rosenberg here from Beerman Law, and I am joined today with Ryan Gardner, my main man and estate and planning attorney at Lavelle Law. And why I asked Ryan here today is because we're in a time of a lot of uncertainty. And a lot of my clients as a divorce lawyer deal with sort of this uncertainty and going from married to now single and living life on their own. And that has a lot of synergy in terms of estate planning and finding that certainty. And a lot of what I advise my clients to do is meet with a team of professionals who are going to provide some of that clarity. And I know Ryan's in that team, and I know he does a great job. And so wanted to talk a little bit about with you guys today, estate plans, wills and trusts, so forth and so on.
Jordan, thank you for having me on today. You know how passionate I am about what I do, and I know you are equally passionate about what you do and the way you help your clients. You know, I think this web series is awesome. I've been following you for a little while now, and so I'm happy to be a part of it. But, you know, when it comes to me and my clients, you know, just like you, I'm super passionate. Education is the most important thing to me because the idea of estate planning can feel intimidating, nuanced, a little bit, you know, complex. I try to strip all that down and make it very easy, straightforward to understand for my clients. So on that 30,000 foot view, the idea is, of course, nobody wants to think about what happens if I'm in a coma or I get in a car accident or I pass away prematurely, something like this. Nobody wants to think about this, but you know, preserving your legacy and having the right documents that are going to clearly set forth what happens in the event of some calamity like that is going to be your best ally in the event of something, you know, breaking bad for you.
Can you kind of like, what's a will? What's a will and what's a trust? Like I hear these words used, we use them in our documents. Tell me what the basics of a will are, what is it, and what's a trust, and why would someone prefer one over the other?
Sure. That's a great question. Probably the most common question I get. You know, I've heard about a will, I've heard about a trust. Aren't trusts just for the Michael Jordans and Scottie Pippens of the world? Shout out to The Last Dance. No, they're not. They're for even, you know, people who own a house, they have kids, they've got life insurance, so, you know, retirement accounts. Any one of those, you know, is going to be a trigger for why you need to have a will and or a trust. When both documents will still accomplish the goal of a clear direction as to what should happen in the event of an untimely death, it's still going to appoint somebody, a manager, either an executor or a trustee, to make sure everything goes smoothly. But really the biggest difference, Jordan, between wills and trusts are that wills under Illinois law require probate court administration upon somebody's passing, whereas trusts do not. So for people that value privacy, people that value asset protection, people that value seamless, efficient transition and not paying lawyers too much, then trusts are the better way to go. And in my practice, from a cost perspective, there's really not much difference in the initial setup because either way, I'm drafting a document that says who gets what, how it's going to be managed, who's in charge. I would just rather call it a trust and have the right language than use a will that I know is setting my clients up and their families up for big problems in the probate court. Trusts avoid probate court, have asset protection and tax efficiencies. So really trusts are the way to go.
Let's say you pass away without a will or a trust. What happens?
Yeah, well, an incredible mess is left behind, right? Because A, we have no direction as to what that person who passed away would have wanted to happen. So if we have no direction, well, good news for all those listeners out there, Illinois is going to make an estate plan for you, essentially, and it's not going to necessarily mirror what you would like to have happen.
So as a starting point, you're sort of talking about, you know, this uncertainty in like, you know, in the event of a death or an illness or who can make medical decisions for you. Have you noticed an influx of call, especially during this COVID time?
Yeah, you know, and I, in some ways, you know, I try to find the silver linings in this really uncertain time. And, you know, people are starting to, you know, take their planning a little bit more seriously. Like I always say to clients, I hope that we draft these documents and they collect dust for the next 30, 50, 70, whatever number of years, right?
Right.
But if we're wrong about that and something does happen unexpectedly, we absolutely want to make sure that that plan is already done. We're not scrambling to call somebody like me to get something in the 11th hour when it's something, it's always easier to get it done when the waters are calm, right? And so although we have some turbulence, societally with COVID, it's still something that we can have some semblance of control over by getting these documents done now.
Right, and I think just as just a low level kind of reminder for people is no one thinks there's going to be a pandemic, right? And so now that we're in it, I think a lot of people may be being proactive and saying, okay, now that I know that something really unexpected has happened to us, right? Now I have to get my life in order. And I think that could be a reason why people are reaching out, which is great to have that plan in place.
Sure. Our prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements. Can you just give me, I know I'm going to kind of turn the table on you a little bit. Can you just give me a little high level about, what is a prenup, what is a postnup, and the difference or the similarities between the two, and kind of the way you see that as adding a lot of value to your clients?
Yeah, I mean, that's really our mechanism of estate planning. And if you think about it, you're planning for your future, you're planning for your death with an estate plan, you're planning for an incapacitation or something along those lines. Ours is you're planning in the event of a divorce, right? And so a prenuptial agreement, you can sort of predetermine the allocation of your marital estate, which is presumptively all property that's acquired during your marriage. You can provide for maintenance, which is alimony, formerly known as alimony. And a lot of the times, our clients with prenups, it's a very quick and relatively straightforward divorce case because all of the financial stuff, by and large, is already disposed of and already decided. And we've had a couple cases where we've actually tried to contest the validity of a prenup. And I don't know, and I'll say this cautiously, but I'm fairly certain that there has not been one case in Illinois that successfully challenged the validity of a prenup under a lot of different circumstances. And so when you sign a prenup, understand that it is more than likely final. The one thing you can't plan for in the event in a prenup is care of children, custody of children, and child support. And the reason for that is because those are always modifiable, and it would go against public policy to say, okay, here's what Johnny's going to need in 10 years for purposes of support. And by the way, here's what's in his or her best interest in 10 years and 15 years in terms of a parenting schedule. But a postnup is something completely different, where it's a agreement between husband and wife or partners that occurs after the marriage. So a prenup is before the marriage and the terms become effective upon the marriage. And a postnup is when two people are already married. It's more of a contract. So it's not governed by any prenuptial agreement act or a postnuptial agreement act. The requirements of a prenuptial agreement are not applicable to a postnuptial agreement. And it's just contract law.
In your practice, how do you support your clients when they have questions like that?
With all of our clients, divorce sort of creates like unintended consequences almost. So where one family becomes two, generally you need another CPA, you need a new money manager, there's going to be a sale or purchase of a real estate, right? Which you need a loan to get that real estate. And by the way, now that our estate planning documents are going to change, that's when we reach out to people like you and say, hey, how do we kind of structure this? So to have consultants on certain areas of the marital settlement agreement is just tremendously helpful. And you guys, especially you and others, that I've met with, have been great at just offering their sort of ear as a resource and to kind of spitball some of these scenarios. And I mean, listen, being an informed client is extremely important, but you hire lawyers for a reason, right? You hire lawyers to advise you and point out these nuances where you wouldn't know necessarily to say, hey, ask the next question, right? You're leaning on your lawyers and your support team to give you that information and guide you in the right direction. And so to have that support team around us is super helpful. Kid issues, right? And child-related issues and custody issues and allocation of parental responsibilities. And so one of the documents that when in cases with kids, one of the documents that has to ultimately be entered with the court is called an allocation judgment. And that's sort of the scripture for what happens with your children during your divorce. And it says, here's how decisions are made. Here's what parenting time looks like. And that is usually the controlling document as to how your children are raised post-divorce in two families, in two separate households. Is there a document similar that I'm talking about in the estate planning setting that applies to either pre-divorce as a family or post-divorce as a separated couple?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as you may imagine, one that I get very common. I mean, a lot of my clients are married, right? And so they're not thinking about, other than once they're both gone, who's going to take? Is it my brother? Is it her sister? What is it going to look like? When we have single clients that come see us, or recently divorced, or, if there's parenting issues that are going on, I always, want to get to know my clients, on a better level when it comes to that, because it's always going to be goal-based and objective-based. So what my clients' wishes are will drive the planning process. As you can imagine, Jordan, there's a lot of levers you can pull when it comes to what type of documentation, what type of direction, to your point, the language matters. So what is that going to look like? Well, we have guardianship appointments that we can make in the will. We have appointment of short-term guardian that will cover you during the event of an incapacity. We want to think through strategically what that guardianship looks like as well. It could mean that we have language that directs the court to have a hearing to determine what is in the best interest of the child if the biological surviving parent is not the right choice. Right. So certainly you guys are doing the right documents during life, but you guys are during life attorneys. In a lot of ways, we are post-death attorneys. We do our planning during life so that post-death, we have that control, we have that, kind of safeguard for our legacy, and more importantly, in this respect, for our children, not just from a money management, but also with where are these children going to go, which arguably is the most important part of estate planning when we have minor children. Having that clear direction is going to make the difference in your children's lives. Everybody thinks they can write a will or a trust, right? Business attorneys think that, sometimes divorce attorneys think that, or immigration, trademark, transactional litigation, doesn't matter. They say, oh, sure, I can put together a will and a trust. And they go to their firm's, document libraries and try to, Frankenstein something together. We tend to find the most problems. If there's a 1 and a 2, it's always, number one is always try to do it myself online with LegalZoom or Law Depot, or I just saw a new one called Trust and Will, which again is it's just .com, all the .com estate planning. It's just another iteration of the LegalZoom, which I'll tell you, the only persons that win when people do LegalZoom, whether that's for prenuptial agreements or that's for estate planning or that's to form their business or whatever that may be, the only ones that end up winning there are the lawyers, because something will inevitably go south. And now, not only are we back at step one, we could actually be lower than step one and have to do enough to fix it to just get back to step one. So
it's sort of the old adage, like, do it right the first way and, minimize problems in the future. It's the same thing for legal documents. It's the same thing for divorce. It's the same thing for estate planning. And so do it right the first time. It's not something to take lightly, and make sure that you pair up with somebody that you trust and that you can ask those questions to get it done the right way. Thanks so much for being here today and kind of sharing whatever you know about estate planning and how you can help people and the different options available to people and sort of the nuances that you have to pay attention to in estate planning. But there's I think what for our listeners to understand is there's a tremendous synergy in terms of estate planning and divorce. And one of the things that I was thinking through while you were talking is even just, organizing your assets. And even, in a divorce, you have to do that balance sheet and that financial disclosure statement. That's tremendously helpful for estate planner like Ryan to look at it, get a clearer picture sort of short circuit some of the grunge work type thing and really focus on sort of the nuances in the big picture. And so there's a tremendous synergy. You've been so helpful to my clients, Ryan, and give people that certainty. And, you know, I think, again, just sort of this whole theme of surrounding yourself with a team of professionals and providing that certainty where you're uncertain, and asking the questions and leaning on your support team to help you through difficult times, if, you know, not planning for your death, which is sometimes morbid for people, planning for your divorce, which is morbid for people, and in the time of pandemic. So I think there's a lot to learn, a lot to ask, and a lot going on. So Ryan, just thanks again, man, for joining us. And
Thanks, Jordan.
Just real quick, again, Jordan Rosenberg, Beerman Law. If you want to reach out to me, I'm 312-262-2567. And Ryan, you want to go ahead and share your contact info?
Sure. I'm Ryan Gardner, estate planning attorney with Lavelle Law. I can be reached at rgardner@lavellelaw.com, but of course you can always find me on Google. And my direct line is 312-888-4114.
Very good. Ryan, thanks again.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate it as always. Keep up the great work.
Thanks,
Stay
man.
safe.
Take care.
Okay, be well.